Well, where shall I start? Born in Newquay, of course, proud Cornish in those days even. And I think my real introduction to being or feeling Cornish was the language. Uh, I've said to many people, I can remember my first introduction to Cornish, walking down Beach Road at Newquay with my mother, going down to town beach. And I saw the name of this cafe, Cheyenne Moor. So I said to mother, "What's that? That's strange." She said, "Well, that's House by the Sea." I said, "Well, it doesn't say House by the Sea to me. It says Cheyenne Moor." Well, she said, "That's Cornish." And I think that was my introduction at about 8, 9 years old into Cornish. And that it took off from there. I did a little bit of place names, interested but not serious. Where I suppose I got serious with my late teens, early 20s, and that's when I was fishing. Not so much full time fishing. One of the harbour rats then at Newquay going out in boats and part timer is when the French crabbers used to come in. And we, of course, got very pally with them and go aboard and have a glass of wine. They would come ashore and have a drink with us, and we used to order bait for them and all bits and pieces. And I soon realised that when they were aboard the boat talking amongst themselves, they weren't talking French. And so I said in my best schoolboy French, I don't understand exactly what you're saying. I said, you're not speaking French, are you? Oh, no, we speak Breton. That is the language. That's our language. I got intrigued with this. So I asked them, well, how do you say this? And how do you say that? And how do you say something else? And I got really interested. Then I did realise, with my very, very limited knowledge of Cornish, that there's quite a similarity. So I thought, I'm going to learn this because then you see, I didn't know anybody around me within 50 miles who could speak Cornish or teach me Cornish. And I thought that's the nearest I'm going to get to speaking Cornish. So I learned Breton. So I spent a lot of time with the fishermen, going aboard the boat and asking questions. Must have been boring them out of their minds, but I've started to learn. I wrote it down in my phonetic way. I could say a few things to them and answer a few questions, ask a few questions. And then when I was much older, probably then 27, yes, 26, 27, I went to sea with them for 3 months. And of course, in those 3 months, they were speaking nothing but Breton aboard the boat. I got to be quite proficient in Breton. And by the time I came ashore, I could hold a tolerable conversation. I couldn't hold a conversation about politics, of course, or state of the franc or the dollar or the pound or what it was in those days. It was all fishing orientated, but I could hold a conversation. And then, of course, having come ashore, I thought, huh, I should be learning Cornish now. There are a few more Cornish people around, speakers and users.
What, even in Newquay?
Well, no, even Cornwall.
Mm.
But they were around. And I got myself, funnily enough, called Cornish Simplified, which I would rename Cornish Complicated, really, because it's not simplified in any shape or form. I got down to that. And then that's where I really got into the Cornish. Uh, I found it difficult at first, strange enough, because people said, it'd be easy if you were to pick up Cornish now because you spoke Breton. But the problem was, although they are so similar in some respects, uh, there are slight differences. And I was tending always to use Breton instead of the Cornish I was then learning. So my initial Cornish was a hodgepodge of Breton and Cornish. But of course, that gradually phased itself out. And now I hardly know any Breton at all because I don't use it. So that is, I suppose, how I got into Cornish initially. And of course, one thing led to another. And here I am today now, having been Grand Bard and consider myself fluent in Cornish, fluent enough to do the news, of course, on Radio Cornwall, or the old Radio Cornwall. So that's the language side. Well, I think the problem stems back with the amount of people coming to live in Cornwall. See, when you're all Cornish living together, you don't think about being Cornish. It's part of life. You don't think, oh, I got to make sure I say es instead of yes or instead of yes. You just did it. So I think when more and more people came into Cornwall to live, and you realise that you were looked upon as speaking a strange accent in your own piece of land, uh, that's when people started to say, look, we're losing things here. We've got to make sure we keep it. But unfortunately, it went two ways. Uh, one way it should have gone is we should have stayed exactly as we were and insisted that we talked the way we did, we acted the way we did, and we kept up the customs as we did. The other way is what a lot of people are doing. They're getting this sort of, well, they are getting this ghettoized image. They're going off and learning academic things, and they're putting an academic slant on Cornish things. Things that they're doing are not natural in Cornwall to me. I was speaking to a chap a long, long time ago. I went to a wedding. There's no need to mention any names because it's immaterial. And when we were coming out of the church, the chap turned to me, wearing his kilt, of course, you see, and he said to me, Rod, he said, why are you wearing a kilt? Show you're Cornish. I said, I don't need to wear a kilt to show I'm Cornish. I speak Cornish. That shows it for me. And this is the thing I'm getting at. There's so many people now have got to wear a tartan kilt or wear a tartan tie or a tartan hat or wear a lapel badge or something to show they're Cornish. Cornishness, if you are Cornish, comes naturally. You haven't got to do some extra to show it.
Do you think it goes too far when it calls itself a country?
I thought this question would come up eventually, and this will rake up a whole hornet's nest now. Going back historically, of course, this business of county and country and nation has always been very shadowy. County, I would never say. You don't have to be impolite, and this is on local radio. I get annoyed when they say across the county. Why can they say across Cornwall? You're not showing that Cornwall's a country or a nation. You're saying what it is, Cornwall. There's no need to say across the county or even across the duchy, across Cornwall or outside of Cornwall if you're coming into Cornwall.
I mean, duchy's incorrect, isn't it?
Well, yeah, because the duchy is a duchy of Cornwall. Of course, the duchy lands extend in Devon and London, the Oval, I believe, is all part of that. Lancashire. So it's not truly, we're only part of the duchy. But see, going back to history, the veiled history, and the unfortunate part of history, which is not taught in schools, has been very nicely glossed over. And when you look at old maps, Cornwall's all shown apart. Maps up to the 1600s always showed England, Scotland, Wales and Cornwall. So there's always a difference. When you look at where people come from, their names, you've got from Wales, Welsh, from Scotland, Scottish, from England, English, from Cornwall, Cornish. Apart from Kent, you've got no issues. You got Devonish, but that's a beer, of course. But you don't have Somersetish or Lancashire or whatever it is. Again, it shows that there's something that links Cornwall as a separate entity. And I'm happy to accept Cornwall as a separate entity or a separate region of the UK because in this day and age we all have to work together. But working together doesn't mean you lose or have your entity destroyed or image destroyed. I do not like county. I'll accept duchy. Country, I think, in this day and age, may be a bit asking too much.